The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 24. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File number 24, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to health, making changes to born alive infant provisions.
I recognize the member from Cass, the author of the bill, Representative Knudsen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. House File 24 is a very simple bill. This bill provides protections for babies that survive an abortion. This makes clear in state law that all reasonable measures consistent with good medical practice are used to preserve the life and health of these babies. Today, I'm sure we will hear many tragic and heartbreaking stories about families losing babies for a variety of unexpected and unavoidable reasons. These situations are truly awful and devastating, but that's not what this bill is about. Again, House File 24 is about protecting babies that are born alive during an abortion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 24.
Third reading. Discussion. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Katiza Watoon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, as a reminder, infanticide is illegal, and doctors already have an obligation to provide appropriate medical care under all circumstances. The language in this bill is a misrepresentation of medical care and will complicate neonatal and postpartum care and bonding time. In the heartbreaking circumstance where a child is to be born incompatible with life, parents are faced with an impossible choice. Often, this diagnosis is made later in pregnancy, and while some parents may choose to terminate that pregnancy, others may choose to carry to term. It can be challenging to know how we may respond or react in any given instance until we're living it. Imagine you and your partner were thrilled to discover you're expecting, looking through baby name books, setting up a registry, painting a nursery. And a few short months later, you receive a fetal diagnosis that is incompatible with life. As an expectant parent, any time you may have with that child is a blessing. And instead of allowing grieving parents to snuggle and soothe that child in those brief moments, the language of this bill would require that doctors instantly whisk your child away for invasive, expensive, and futile medical treatments, robbing you of those first and last moments with your newborn. Members, this language is misleading and it is unnecessary. Please join me in voting no.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. So as my colleague said, infanticide is indeed illegal in Minnesota, despite what the right-wing media has been saying for months and months. As our governor was running on a national ticket, there were all kinds of lies about what our laws are here in Minnesota. Bald-faced lies. And as the more I've thought about this law, which we repealed 2 years ago and is now, this bill is an attempt to reinstate it, the more I realize what a fraud this law really is. This law was created to demonize doctors and to demonize people who simply want the government out of their most private, personal decisions. That is what this law was about. So members, when you look at the law that actually is now repealed, there was a definition in law of what they meant by born alive infant. And when you read that definition, you realize it was not just the so-called infant that was born alive after an abortion. It was really pretty much every infant. Maybe it was every single infant born. So this whole idea that there are infants born alive after an abortion, this is not something that actually happens. It really doesn't happen. That's just not how this works. And we have an abortion report in the state, and every year the Department of Health reports on the number of abortions in the state. And for many years under the old, now repealed law, they were required to report the so-called born alive infants. And so they would report every year. And I took the time some months ago to actually go through these reports and look at those numbers, because these numbers are often waived. People who support this law often get up and say, but look at all these infants that were reported under this law. Well, guess what? The definition of a born alive infant was such that it included every infant who was born alive with any sort of medical condition, even what Representative Katiza Watun was just talking about. That would have, an infant who was born with a devastating, some kind of devastating condition that would shorten its life, that infant would be considered a born alive infant under this reporting law. But even with all of that, even when this law was in place, there was not one single report. I went through 7 years of these reports very carefully, totaling up and looking at the reports. There was not one single infant reported to be saved under this law. So think about that. Here we had this big law, and it was much more complicated than what's being introduced today, and not one infant was reported being saved. But there were some reports of various kinds of things. So I looked at 2016 to 2022. So there were 19 such reported over 7 years under this law. But that doesn't mean that a single one of those was an infant born alive after an abortion, because that wasn't the definition that was used to write these reports. But what we do see under those reports is that it is still extremely rare to have an abortion late in pregnancy. And in those 7 years, there were only 15 after 24 weeks of gestation in 7 years. So when you look at those reports, because I know somebody's going to get up and say, oh, look at these reports. It says there were infants born alive after abortion. That's not what the reports mean. And that's part of the problem. Under the old law, nobody knew what it meant. So if a doctor decided to report, it was pretty much guesswork that they wanted to report. But not a one of them was a so-called infant born alive after an abortion. But I want to turn your attention to the language of this bill that is before you, because if you read this bill, whether you support abortion or don't, look what you're voting for when you vote for this bill. What the law currently says, an infant who is born alive, which is basically all of us, every one of our kids, every infant born alive, shall be fully recognized as a human person and accorded immediate protection under the law. And if you vote for this bill, you are voting to take away that protection. What you will be saying is that only an infant who is born alive as the result of an abortion, which is few to none, that only that infant is a person. So let me say this again, just to be very clear. If you vote yes on this bill, you are saying that infants born alive in this state are not people. That's an incredible thing to be voting for. Even if you agree with the rest of the bill, you will be saying that infants born alive in this state are not people. Now, that's a result of how oddly this bill is drafted. That was the choice of the author. It didn't have to be that way, but that's what you've got before you. So think really hard before you vote for this bill, members. This bill deserves a big, fat no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Liebling, I think the Department of Health knew darn good and well what the legislature meant when that bill was passed, and that is exactly the data they were keeping. Members, no one, I would hope that no one in this room, and certainly no one back in 2015, thought it was something that was even close to being humane is when a baby survives an abortion to leave it on a cold stainless steel table left to die on its own. We had quite a debate on the passage of the original bill. And we had some interesting people that are still in this chamber on the other side of the aisle that voted for it, one of them being former Speaker Melissa Hortman. Also, over in the Senate at the time, Representative Murphy was in this body, and she voted in favor of it. Members, if we do not have the humanity to save a baby, give life-giving measures to a baby that survives an abortion, what are we doing in this body? Would Representative Engen yield to a question?
Representative Engen will yield. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Engen, I know you have baby Everett. And how many weeks gestation was he born?
Representative Engen.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Scott. He was born at exactly 28 weeks gestational age on the bathroom floor during an emergency at-home birth.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if Representative Engen would yield?
He will yield. Go ahead, Representative Scott.
Thank you. And Representative Engen, I've seen newspaper articles featuring the birth of Everett, and you credit whom for saving his life?
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Scott. So many people. There were 3 individuals who were instrumental in him being with us today. Josh Perro, an EMT, Sam Bergeron, a Lionel Lakes police officer, and Brett McCreevy, who all jumped into the back of an ambulance and whisked him away, to use Representative Liebling's words, and provided that life-saving care. I thought I was holding my stillborn son when I first met him and named him on the bathroom floor in a puddle of blood. Still, it's tough sometimes to go into that bathroom and just use it at all. It was traumatic, but because they acted, they saw that he wasn't breathing. They saw that there wasn't a pulse that they could register. And because they brought him to the hospital, even after 30 minutes of not having oxygen, and they performed that life-saving care, that's why he's here today.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Engen, thank you for answering those questions. I know it's difficult to go through that again, and I know how thankful you are that Everett's with us. And members, so if a baby that is 28 weeks gestation and they survive an abortion, no one's going to come to the rescue of that baby under current law. No one's going to come to the rescue of that baby like they did Representative Engen's baby. Is that okay? I don't think it is. Members, we all know what the intent of this bill is. The Department of Health knew it back when it passed in 2015. Everyone in the state knows what this bill is about. And I don't remember, I think it's in the 84% of people in the state of Minnesota believe that this should be the law. Members, please vote in favor of this bill.
I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Thank you, members. You know what this bill ensures is that all baby lives matter, and that includes babies who survive an abortion. You know, members, I've had the honor of preserving life for 31 years as an EMT. Approximately 4 years ago, a Saturday night, Sunday morning, pager goes off at 3 in the morning, and it was a troubled pregnancy. We got to the scene, of course. Mom and Dad was excited. I was excited. These runs are extremely difficult. You don't get many of these runs. So she had a troubled pregnancy. We got into the rig, and I called baby Z. I was there to assist Mom to give birth to baby Z. It was no bigger than my hand. No bigger than my hand. 21 weeks. I did everything humanly possible to save that baby. And I was praying all the way. That run, which we've gone many times, that would have been my 27th year serving as an EMT. I've gone to the Coteau Prairie Hospital in Sisseton many, many times. And literally that felt like eternity. We did not save that baby. Folks, what this bill does is really simple. This bill changes comfort care to life-preserving care for any baby that is born. Like what I provided in the back of that ambulance to my maximum skill level, providing respirations, providing everything, CPR for that infant, because when it was born, it was not alive. If you look at the bill, it says it changes care for the infant who is born alive to preserve the life and health of a born alive infant from abortion. Babies' lives matter. If it's 3 or 5 or 2 a year, they matter. Just like in the back of that ambulance to Mr. and Mrs. Zemer, it mattered to them that I did all I could to save that baby's life. Afterwards, there was 3 of us on that run. I have never broken down like I did ever in 31 years with that run. Folks, vote yes. This is common sense. Thank you, members.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in strong support of this bill. For years, members, this was the standard of care in our law, supported in bipartisan fashion. I don't even know why it's controversial. If there's an abortion and a baby is born alive, it should be incumbent on us to try to preserve the life of that child. So I encourage us, the language is very clear. I know people have been disputing the language, but if you look at the bill, I have it in front of me, it says a born alive infant as a result of an abortion, so not the kids that are talked about where they are carried to term and have a crisis or a very sad situation where they won't survive. That is not the case that this bill is addressing, even though that circumstance is also very tragic. This is specifically addressing cases where the infant is born alive as a result of an abortion, and that we fully recognize this child as a human person and provide care to preserve the life. Comfort care is not preserving the life, and it's incumbent on us, if a baby is born alive, to try to save their life. They are a fully human child that has that opportunity to live just like Everett has lived, and earlier and earlier medical intervention can make a huge difference. So I hope this is bipartisan, members. This used to be bipartisan. We have strong consensus in the public on this. I hope we can have strong consensus in the chamber. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to revert away from my own story. I told it a couple of times, and frankly, it's still tough for me to talk about, but I want to talk instead about what I saw inside of the NICU for 75 days, just a couple of blocks from here. We saw so many different stories, some like our own, where a mother went into some sort of a traumatic pregnancy and had a a baby who was born prior to their due date, who are fighting just like Everett, babies just like Everett who are fighting for life. We saw mothers who were battling substance abuse disorder, who had a baby in the NICU who was withdrawing, and I remember those cries, and those ones stick with you. I heard so many different stories, and we came across so many different people in all walks of life. And I think it's so simple to just make this an abortion issue. I'd like to turn away from that, that conversation alone, and instead reframe this as an issue of when we as a state, when we as a body, when we as people recognize that living, breathing, unique, and perfect life, just like you or I, is worthy of fighting for. And just like my son at 28 weeks was worth fighting for, these babies are worth fighting for. They didn't choose to be in this position. The mom obviously didn't. The father didn't. Nobody is hoping for this. But I watched my son in particular fight for life at 28 weeks without a heartbeat, in extreme and severe hypothermia, without oxygen for 30 minutes. He grasped onto the finger of the firefighter who was traveling in the back of that ambulance with him. And that's fighting for life. I met a mom at the NICU who had twins, and she was battling substance abuse disorder, and one of her babies passed away, and it was tragic. It was heartbreaking. She was right next door to us. We talked with her all the time. Really, really nice human being, and it was a sad ordeal. And they fought for both of those lives before coming to the conclusion that the son was not going to make it. And I watched a funeral occur no more than 10 yards away from me. And I watched that mom hold that baby for the last time. And it was obvious that she didn't want to be in that position. It was obvious that she knew that she was losing a loved one. But before that occurred, even though it's sad, that was an experience that both that baby and that mom had together. It was all too short-lived that they got to feel each other's warm embrace and see each other's faces, but it was nonetheless just as powerful as any other life. And when I see a bill like this with 17 years of bipartisan support, more, this isn't about abortion, guys. It isn't. It's about stories like those and saying instead of just reverting to that easy fix, that comfort care abortion, we're going to say, oh, this isn't going to work out. Let's just set it on this table. That we're going to first fight. That we're going to allow that baby to fight. This should be a full green board, guys. We can have abortion debates later on different bills, whatever. I mean, it's the debate to end all debates, but this one shouldn't be a debate at all. This is about the protections of humanity and civil rights in every case, just like if something were to happen to us. So thank you.
I recognize the member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very personal subject and issue. Last biennium, I shared with this body my son, Seth. So you know, those who are here, you know how personal this is for me. And I think it's personal for all of us, honestly. We could all come up with something that would make it personal for us, this subject that we're debating here right now. But I can't believe what I heard earlier from the corner in that room, that somehow voting green for this bill, it was explained it's going to do the opposite of what the bill actually says. Heard words that said what a fraud this bill is. This bill protects the lives of human beings, little baby boys and little baby girls. That's what this bill does. We all need to have a heart in this room this afternoon. A born-alive infant, as the result of an abortion, shall be fully recognized as a human person and accorded immediate protection under the law. A baby boy or a baby girl who survives an abortion outside the womb, breathing with a heartbeat, that's what this bill does. It protects baby boys and baby girls. And I got to tell you, you got to spin things pretty good to say, oh, that's actually what you'll be voting against if you vote yes on this bill. HF24 ensures that babies born alive during abortion are given life-saving care. That's what this bill does. And that board should be lit up green. I want to speak with a heart of compassion about this issue, and I believe we all do. But I'm confounded by what I heard just moments ago. And I've been speaking with members one-on-one on that side of the aisle, pleading with you to join us in protecting life. All you got to do is read the bill, read the plain language of the bill. Last session, when this chamber and the neighboring chamber and Governor Walz legalized abortion up to the point of birth, and yes, I know that's not what we're debating tonight. We also took away that language that protects these babies. And this used to be a bipartisan issue. And it can be a bipartisan issue once again tonight. Minnesota did not want that. I'm going to share with you some survival stories. Claire Caldwell survived an abortion attempt when her 13-year-old mother went to a clinic while 5 weeks pregnant with twins. The attempt on her life killed her twin sibling but missed Claire, who continued to grow undetected. Weeks later, her mother returned for a second attempt. Born alive at 30 weeks, weighing 3 pounds, 2 ounces, she suffered a dislocated hip and clubbed feet from trauma. She was adopted by a loving family. Claire discovered her survival story at 21 years of age when she met her birth mother. She says she was coerced into having an abortion, and she didn't know that Claire had lived. Her mother expressed regret. You want to know what Claire did? Claire expressed love and compassion. Thank God Claire's life mattered. Gianna Jessen survived a saline abortion attempt. Her 17-year-old mother sought the procedure at Planned Parenthood when she was 7.5 months pregnant. 7.5 months pregnant. Her medical records note this: born during saline abortion. Because she lacked oxygen during the attempt, left her with cerebral palsy. Because she lacked oxygen during the attempt. It left her with cerebral palsy. She calls it a tremendous gift. A tremendous gift. She received life-saving care, weighing in at only 2.5 pounds at birth. What a story of a champion. What a story of a mighty woman. Here's what she had to say. She describes surviving 18 hours in the saline solution and credits her survival to divine intervention, saying, "Death did not prevail over me, and I am so thankful." You want to know why? Because her story, Gianna's story, is that she would rather exist than not exist. She walks with a limp and has had years of therapy, but she ran a marathon. Pretty cool. What a champion. What an inspiring story. She goes around now speaking about her story, emphasizing compassion and forgiveness. A story close to home, Minnesota's own Michaela Clay, who testified. Michaela was born alive during a failed abortion attempt. The procedure took place late in the pregnancy, and Michaela was far enough along to survive. It was a failed vacuum. A vacuum aspiration procedure. She was born alive. She was born alive. Her mother panicked and left baby Michaela right there with her older brother in the waiting room. Michaela was then taken to a hospital. She struggled to survive without immediate medical intervention. They did get her to a hospital, but she had underdeveloped lungs. It's led to lifelong breathing difficulties for her. But you know what? She's grateful to be alive. She's grateful for the care that she did get. These are the stories, and there's many more, there's a lot more. These are the stories that are directly related to what we are trying to put in statute tonight. From 2015 to 2022, 24 babies in Minnesota survived an abortion. Oh, but yet we didn't know the definition of that. Doctors didn't know how to define that. Well, doctors are pretty smart. Doctors are pretty smart. 24 babies in Minnesota survived an abortion from 2015 to 2022. Those are the facts. And I've even heard this argument, well, that's not that many. One's worth it. The number one is worth it. Our chaplain for the day, I loved his prayer. He mentioned that everyone in this room is created by God and loved by God. I believe that with all my heart. And I believe with all my heart that these children have a unique destiny ordained by the living God, never to be written again. And that destiny begins here on earth, and we dare not snuff it out. Let's light up that board with the color green, the color of life.
I recognize a member from Douglas, Representative Franson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I've heard this argument so many times. The doctor's going to whisk the baby away, and it's going to be hooked up to machines, and the mom is not going to have time to bond with that child. Members, she's having an abortion. She didn't want that baby in the first place. So do you think if that baby is born alive, that mom is going to say, I just want to hold the baby? I want to comfort the baby. That mom planned to discard that baby like trash. Kill it in the womb and throw it in the garbage. That mom is not going to be very happy that that baby was born alive. We have got to stop convoluting We have to stop twisting the facts around. This is about babies that are born through adoption or abortion. That mom did not want to put that baby up for adoption. That mom wanted to kill the baby inside the womb, toss it in the garbage, and forget it happened. That's how that mom was dealing with the responsibility of being pregnant. Killed in the womb, tossed in the garbage, and oh, the baby's now alive. That mom doesn't want to provide life-saving care. That mom does not want to hold the baby. But we have to believe that life is precious, and no matter how that baby is born, deserves a shot at life. It is not garbage. You cannot set babies aside to die. And that's what that mother wants to do. And that's what appears Democrats, again, want to do here. Baby's born alive through abortion, didn't really want the baby, we're just going to let it die. That's wrong. That is murder. That is infanticide. We are better than that. We are better than letting babies die on a table, on a cold, cold table. That's what this bill is about. This bill is about saying life has value no matter how you are born. If it's in the case of Representative Engen's baby's traumatic entry into this world, or if it's through a mother that chose to have abortion and that baby makes it out of the womb alive. We have heard testimony from individuals that were born via abortion that were meant to die in the womb, that are alive today because of life-saving care. Minnesota should not ever be a state where we say, if you have an abortion and that baby is born alive, don't worry, it's still gonna die. You're not gonna have to deal with it. That mom doesn't want that baby, and that's why we have adoption, and that is why we have foster care. But first, we have to save that baby's life, because every child has potential, no matter how they're born. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
So for a debate that's not about abortion, a lot of what you guys had to say was about abortion. And we're here to debate House File 24, which actually is a pretty simple bill. And I want to start out my response here by just reminding you of what current law says. It says, an infant who is born alive shall be fully recognized as a human being and accorded immediate protection under the law. That's an infant. However they're born, if they're born alive, the law says they're a person and accorded immediate protection under the law. And then it says, all reasonable measures consistent with good medical practice, including the compilation of appropriate medical records, shall be taken by the responsible medical personnel to care for the infant who is born alive. There is nothing in current law that would allow an infant, however born, to be left on any tables and abandoned. The law says they have to receive care that's consistent with medical principles, appropriate medical care by a responsible medical professional. So if some infant is left somewhere to die, that is clearly malpractice. It might even be criminal. It is not allowed under current law. So all of the gnashing of teeth about how we're leaving infants to die is fraudulent. That is not what we have ever done. No one here has ever condoned anything of the sort. I do want to just respond, I want to respond to a number of things. One is, I'll start with the last comment about these mothers who want to get rid of their child or all of that. You know, a lot of times, people who have abortions later in pregnancy do it because there's a problem. If you have a child with a really serious problem or something happens in the pregnancy, and pregnancy, I hope you all realize, is an extremely dangerous time. There can be extremely dangerous things that happen to women's health. The pregnant woman can become very seriously ill and can need to have an abortion to save her very life. So this sort of picture of what it means when someone has an abortion is not accurate. So to say that someone even would have an abortion and then not want to hold their child while it passes, maybe it has a very serious fetal anomaly that's incompatible with life, and they had to have it delivered early by whatever means so that they would actually live to have another pregnancy maybe, that mother may very well want to hold that baby. So this picture of what this is just not true. It's just not true, and it's very unfair to people who've had these really critical things happen. Representative Engen said this shouldn't be a debate at all. You know, Representative Engen's son, as I understand it, was born under current law after we repealed this measure. And I'm very glad to hear that things went okay and that that baby was revived. And, you know, we all should want families to, you know, have the absolute ability to have care that's appropriate for an infant, whatever that infant may need. That is wonderful. Nobody is taking that away. And under current law, which you all are repealing today, any infant born alive is a person. You're limiting that definition to say that it's only an infant who's born alive after an abortion, and the rest of them are no longer in the definition. That is why you should all be voting red on this bill. I don't know, so I know that Representative Scott said no one comes to the rescue. Again, under current law, the infant is owed care. There is no abandonment under current law. That would be malpractice. That would probably be criminal conduct. And Representative Backer, I've heard you tell the story before about saving a baby as an EMT, and I would just say that's wonderful. And EMTs have a different obligation. They need to, right away, try to save any life. They're sent there to save a life, and they need to do that. And that is not anything that this bill is contrary to, as the current law is contrary to. But again, when you vote for this bill, you are taking away the current law that says that every infant is a person and entitled to care. And it's care that is appropriate for that person, which very much could include care to maintain life and health. It absolutely could, and most of the time it probably will. But in those instances where the family doesn't want that baby to have tubes stuck down its throat or any of those things, maybe knows that it's going to be born incompatible with life, this gives the option for that. So I persist in saying, you know, I respect the fact that you all feel very strongly about abortion. We're not going to convince anybody here on the topic of abortion. Everybody already has how they feel about it. And those of us on this side of the aisle, Democrats, by and large, these days believe that government should get out of those decisions. We believe that people are capable of making their own intimate decisions, that every pregnancy is different, that we shouldn't stereotype people because their life experiences really vary and their experience of pregnancy can vary. And what we see in the states that are banning abortions is women are literally dying because they have a pregnancy where they absolutely need an abortion for their own life and health, and they cannot get it. And that is the problem with having the government make your decisions for you, is we cannot legislate people's personal lives. All of you who are for freedom, 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 it is a value we should all share. But apparently, all of us don't share it when it comes to people making their own personal, intimate decisions. So members, I could obviously talk about this for a long time. This idea that infants are being left somewhere is a fraud. That is not happening. If it's happening, it is already illegal. If you want to retain in law that every infant in this state who is born alive shall be fully recognized as a human being and accorded immediate protection under the law, that is what current law says. This bill changes it. You must vote no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. House File 24 is a crucial bill that seeks to restore and strengthen protections for infants born alive following an abortion procedure. Of course, every infant born alive any other way is fully recognized as human. That's why we have homicide laws. But we need clarity when it comes to infants born after the decision to undergo an abortion has been made. And House File 24 ensures that any such infant is fully recognized as a human being and granted immediate legal and medical protections. This legislation affirms our ethical and moral responsibility as a society to provide medical care for all individuals, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. For many Minnesotans, it may be difficult to believe that a bill like this is necessary. Of course, every living, breathing infant should receive the same legal and medical protections as everyone else. So it's unfortunate that this legislation is necessary. It's necessary because in 2023, Democrats and Governor Walz eliminated that long-standing bipartisan protection for infants who survive abortion attempts. As we heard today, both DFL caucus leaders, when they were members of the House, voted for this legislation. It is sad that it is no longer broadly supported bipartisan legislation. And the removal of those compassionate, humane, and widely supported safeguards left millions of Minnesotans shocked and deeply concerned when Democrats did it in 2023, and millions of Americans learned about it in 2024 during the presidential campaign, and they were rightly shocked and concerned as well. So today, we have the opportunity to restore those protections, ensuring that our laws once again reflect fundamental principles of human decency. This bill affirms a simple but profound truth. Infants are infant brothers and sisters who survive an abortion are living human beings, and they deserve the same rights, the same medical attention, the same legal protection as any other person. Supporting House File 24 is a reaffirmation of our shared values, compassion, dignity, and respect for life, and I urge all of you to support this vital legislation. Restore the protections these vulnerable infants, these precious human beings, rightfully deserve. Please vote green.
I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Knudsen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. Wow. I just want to start with a quote. If this law saves one life, then that's good enough. That was said last year by Governor Tim Walz. Today we are faced with a simple but critical question. Do we as lawmakers, do we believe that every baby born has the right to live? House File 24 is not about politics. This is not about partisanship. It's about whether we will protect the most vulnerable among us, newborn babies, regardless of how they come into this world. This bill ensures that any infant born alive, including after a failed abortion, is given the same medical care and intervention that any other newborn would receive. That's it. That's all. We are not debating abortion today. The choice has already been made. The baby survived by the grace of God, and now we're asking to protect that baby. That's it. House File 24 makes it clear in law that every baby deserves that right. This is not controversial. This shouldn't even be up for debate. It wouldn't be up for debate if we didn't pass House File 91 last year, 2 years ago. We've heard that this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. Well, if that's true, Representative Liebling, if this doesn't happen, let's just make sure that it can't happen. Let's just make sure. This is our opportunity. Let's make sure it can't happen. We've also heard that no medical professional would deny life-saving care to a baby that was born alive. Well, if that's true, then why are you fighting so hard against it? If they're already going to do it, then let's just make it clear in law that they have to. I ask each of you, from the depths of my soul, regardless of what party we are, regardless of how we feel about abortion, let's protect these babies. Let's protect these 3 to 5 babies that are born alive during an abortion every year in our state. Members, today is Redemption Day. This is our opportunity to right a past wrong. Please join us in voting to protect those babies that are born alive during an abortion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 66 nays, the bill is not passed.